Hello there, and welcome to this Steam Next Fest live stream. Quite the mouthful for Tin Hearts. My name is Sam. I'm a producer here at Wired Productions, and I am lucky, a very, very lucky man right now because I'm with the incredible. There are other incredible words for him, but I'm just going to double down on incredible. It's Kostas from Vogue Sun, who is the game's creative director. We've managed to get you out for a day to talk about the game. How lucky are we? Hello, Kostas.
I'm the lucky one because yeah, I could definitely use the break, and it's great to be here talking about the game. Supposed to be working on it for a change.
Don't tell it. I won't
Uh,
tell anyone. Don't. No one. No one will know. Okay, it's fine.
yeah, uh, yeah. No, it's great to be here at Next Fest. It's our first Next Fest as a studio, and certainly with this title as well. So yeah, can't wait to see what people think of the game.
It's super exciting because it's the first time where, right now, in case you didn't know, you can go and download a demo of the game and play a serious chunk of Tin Hearts before release and get a really, really great insight into it. And how long are we talking? This demo is like it's hours. I'm saying.
Well, it should be a it should be a good hour or so. Yeah, depending how, how long you want to sort of take going through the levels and sort of exploring. Besides obviously the main kind of puzzles, there's a lot of environmental storytelling. Tin Hearts is a narrative puzzler. So you spend a lot of time solving puzzles, and you spend a lot of time sort of trying to piece the story together. And yeah, you will see a lot of both of those things in this demo. It's a sort of kind of a cherry picked list of levels from the first act in the game, which in the full game is a good couple of hours, 2 to 3 hours, again depending on how slow you like to take things. And yeah, in these levels, there's some early sort of more kind of tutorial levels where we sort of teach you kind of the base mechanics in the game. And then, yeah, also once you get confident with those, we start kind of ramping up the challenge with the puzzle solving and introducing more of the game's pretty epic story that, as we like to say, kind of spans generations and dimensions. So yeah, there's a lot to see for you guys to see, and there's a lot of feedback and impressions and anything you'd like to contribute back from your experience for us to analyze, because yeah, a big part of why we're doing that is to show you some of the game, but yeah, also would love to hear what you think of it. The good, the bad, the ugly, everything is useful for us, and it's great that we have this opportunity to hear from you and hopefully make the final game as best as we can.
Without a doubt, I mean, we look and read every single comment that come out of these opportunities for our fans, or those interested in the game to play, and we read those comments and we appreciate absolutely everything, um, and and actually it will really help you and the development team if you get loads of comments on, like, I got stuck on this puzzle, I didn't quite understand this, that hugely helps, and we take absolutely everything on board. Another incredible, everything's incredible. Cost is incredible. The game's incredible. Another amazing asset we're releasing today is a brand new trailer for the game, which I believe we have entitled this one "The Power Glove." So we'll take a look at that right now. I think you all agree that trailer. There's a lot going on, and that song is going to get stuck in the classical um, uh, Hall of a Mountain King. Am I right?
Indeed.
I've got the album. Will be stuck in your head all day long. But what I wanted to allude to properly there was there's quite a lot happening in that trailer, and the contrast of sort of what Tin Hearts offers, both story wise, gameplay wise. So maybe we can have a chat about that.
Yeah, for sure. As you know, Sam, this is our second trailer, and with our first trailer, we sort of alluded to again some of the story, some of the mechanics. The first trailer, you could argue, is more of a teaser trailer, and one of the things that we have in this game is just richness in
With that, yeah,
in mechanics, in sort of just the sheer kind of scope and scale of the timeline of events. It's very easy. So we describe the game as Lemmings meets Charles Dickens' A Christmas Carol. So, yes, when you see a bit of gameplay, you can see that it's about leading these toy soldiers from this magical box that exists in pretty much every level that you open to this magical fairy door. And yeah, from a puzzle game point of view, that is what it is. But yeah, much like we were saying earlier, about the demo itself. It's a game that we like to build games that sort of delight and surprise you, pretty much moment to moment, ideally. And of course, every game is a sort of roller coaster experience, and you need to have those peaks and troughs. But the games that I've enjoyed the most are games that sort of take you on a journey. From the very start to to the moment where the credits roll, and uh you're constantly surprised and delighted, like say. So yeah, we wanted to with the second trailer, we wanted to build something that tries to kind of capture that sort of richness and variety a bit more. And as you say, in in the tonal shift that or shifts that take place and the experience, in the richness of mechanics and the richness of environments. And yeah, so with the second one, yeah, we definitely kind of up the ante. And yeah, hopefully it does capture some of that. And yeah, as you say, very very catchy song as well.
yes, yes.
Yeah.
I can imagine that got caught caught in a few editors' uh, brain patterns for, for weeks on end. What I really love about this trailer though, and also the first trailer we put out, is that with a lot of these sorts of I would say the first trailer was like an emotional roller coaster of like I think everyone watching it, especially on YouTube, I've seen the comments and other websites. The comments are like, "This is oh we know how this story plays out." But I
Mhm.
absolutely love the contrast of the Power Glove trailer, because actually there's a sort of dark, possibly like sinister side to the game that maybe people who have taken interest in Tin Hearts don't expect there to be. So, am I alluding to there is a lot more in Tin Hearts than players should expect?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, as you know, I'm super spoiler averse, so I'll try to answer that question as best as I can. Um, Yeah, I mean it's great actually, as you say. Even with the first trailer, we just absolutely love going through comments and kind of reading people's theories about things, and sort of rubbing our hands together when we go, no, it's not actually what you think. But it's great. This with everything we put out there, whether it's the game itself and something like a trailer, because as we tend to sort of build, we feel that uh how you communicate your game is actually an extension to the game itself. So as you know, we get very involved with that side of things, because
It
You
adds to the
know,
journey, doesn't it? I would say.
exactly. The journey, really begins before you actually sit down with a
That
controller
it
or
does.
and start playing it. So so we want people to come up with these theories, and because if it's something that you feel you might like to play, you kind of start engaging with it before you even sit down and play, like say. So so we want people to kind of come up with these theories with everything we put out there. Obviously we want to communicate what the game is about and sort of, give an idea and sort of, ensure people have an impression for whether it's something that is a cup of tea at the end of the day. But also, like say, I'm personally very spoiler of that. So I think the best trailers, even when it comes to movies and things, are the things that make me go, for me, they make me go, I definitely want to watch that or play that. But it's great because they didn't give anything away. I can definitely tell that it's something that I will enjoy. And also, yeah, they haven't really spoiled it for me. So, when I sit down and watch it or play it, I'm sure I'm going to have a great time. And in the meantime, my brain is already engaged and I'm coming up with all these theories and things. Yeah, and now to kind of not spoil some stuff per se, but to answer your question about the sort of tonal kind of shifts in the game. Um, yeah, so the story in the game is quite personal. I have to say, and I guess it deals with themes around sort of family and sort of creativity, which for me and for many on my team and for many game developers and other creators in general, I guess are themes that we deal with sort of on a daily basis. And yeah, I guess so. Albert Butterworth, the sort of main character in the story, he features there, sort of right at the start, kind of building the titular power glove, and at the end of the trailer, again, kind of using it. And yeah, obviously, anyone who's seen the first trailer or knows even a little bit about the game, they know that this is a game about this Victorian sort of toy maker, and the story of his life, I guess. And yeah, and we kind of wanted to capture. There is a sort of kind of darkness around sort of the creativity and sort of the power of invention, and how things like that can be used for good or for evil, and all these ideas around whether it is good or evil sometimes purely depends on the situation and the context of the individual's kind of uh, life or a moment in their life, and sometimes that is completely outside of their control, and how that affects themselves or people around them. Yeah, there's kind of a lot of sort of interesting questions, I suppose, and we again we just want people to sort of go on this journey and sort of question these things for themselves, and hopefully reflect on some of these concepts, all while they're having fun solving some cool puzzles. So yeah, there are definitely lots and lots of layers in Hearts.
So, Costas, we asked you, you, our audience, we went on the internet, if you've heard of that, and we asked for a bunch of questions for us to deliver to you and get the
Ooh,
answers. Are you ready
tempting.
to? We need these answers, okay,
We'll
Costas?
find out. We'll
We're
find
going to
out if I'm
find
ready.
find out. So don't mind. I'm just reading off my. No, I'm not.
The
I'm not
script.
reading off my script. Yes, yeah, yeah.
What's that? That looked like your dissertation, Sam. So some graphs and things.
I think to think this is all scripted is impressive, isn't it? But I've got some. Hopefully, we can do quick fire questions. Otherwise, we could be here for hours. But let's start off with question number one. Question number one. How was working on the Fable series help? How did that help inspire Tin Hearts?
Ooh, good question.
They're all
Um,
good questions, Costas.
Yeah. Well, I'm trying to think. I mean, working on the Fable series was amazing. Obviously, it was sort of what started me on my games development journey. Fantastic time. Made lifelong friends. Learn, like I say, learn most of what I know about making games. So in some ways, Hearts wouldn't be possible if it weren't for my time working on Fable and the Lionhead games. So yeah, so that's been fantastic. I think in terms of kind of inspirations and sort of commonalities, I would say yeah, the sort of Britishness kind of the two games is the sort of main sort of connecting sort of factor. Beyond that, obviously there are things like a sort of a character driven story. Yeah, Tin Hearts is a puzzle game though, so in terms of genre, it's quite a departure, and I guess that's kind of where we then, as Rogue Sun, are more sort of you know going in our
Your own
own
direction.
direction. Yeah,
Amazing. Now we've got plenty of toys in the game. Are there any you wanted to add that maybe you couldn't?
too many, too many. But we do have to finish this game at some point, don't we, Sam?
This is
So,
true. We got
so
yes. People want to play it. Otherwise, we'd be here forever.
let me see if I remember any. Oh, yeah, there was a Helter Skelter, which I think got pretty functional at some point as well, but it needed more work. To like we like to ensure anything that does make it into the game has the right amount of kind of polish and feels good to use. It makes sense in the sort of world of the game, and both from a narrative point of view, like pretty much every toy that's in there almost has its entire kind of own sort of narrative. The toys are kind of characters themselves
Hmm.
in the world of Tin Hearts, and you'll certainly see why. I mean, even in this next fest demo, you'll get to see kind of aspects of that. So, I guess we want to make sure that they're fully fleshed out. So, if something feels like a good idea, we'll certainly try it. But then, we'll always go, you know, can we give this the attention it deserves? And if not, then we'll bank it and hopefully use it
Might see it later on.
in
Yes.
the sequel.
Oh, we got to
Just,
finish this game first. Come
yeah,
on.
yeah, exactly. But yeah, the Helter Scale was pretty good fun. Yeah, they would go in at the top, then slide down, and then come out the other end. But yeah, like I say, might see it one day.
Right, right, right. Now we I've chatted about it before, but what made you go with sort of virtual reality as an option?
Virtual reality was actually kind of the when we started playing around with the concept, and as a new studio back in 2016. There's a lot of interest around virtual reality, especially in the development community. We as game devs, we love to play around with the next kind of best toy, and yeah, so it actually Tin Hearts actually started in the VR space, and a lot of the fact that you play this game where a lot of it kind of takes place at this sort of tiny scale around the player, was us kind of thinking, what would make a good virtual reality game. Uh, and in virtual reality, locomotion, and certainly back in those days, I think these days people at least experienced VR gamers have found their VR legs, as their saying goes. So it's not as bad kind of moving around in sort of big spaces. But at the time we were kind of thinking, could we make something that has a lot of sort of meaningful gameplay, engaging kind of story rich and content rich and mechanics rich gameplay, but actually takes place in a small uh, sort of scale around the play. So that's kind of basically why VR is part of the Tin Heart story. As we then developed the concept, we realized we had a really strong narrative puzzle game in our hands,
And everything
and
just came together.
yeah, we then thought. it's not something that VR is not the only place where gamers can consume this story and this puzzle gameplay. So yeah, so then we expanded out from there.
What another question for you. What other puzzle games have inspired Tin Hearts?
And what's that one with the little blue guys that walk along with green hair?
Alludes
Mm,
lemons,
Lumen?
luminings.
That's a different one. Yeah, so obviously, yeah, Lemmings is the main inspiration around sort of the core mechanic of cute little things that you have to care for and help them get from point A to point B. Uh, I suppose another game that I'm personally a really big fan of is a little game called The Witness. I'm a big fan of Jonathan Blow's work in general, even before The Witness. Braid, obviously, kind of seminal, I guess, puzzle game.
Yeah,
Part of the story, I guess, of the kind of indie game kind of revolution.
without a doubt, yes.
Yeah, so and I guess kind of another game where time control plays an important part in the gameplay. So yeah, I would say those three games are kind of very very big inspirations. A more recent game as well, not necessarily a puzzle game, but What Remains of Edith Finch is another game that you know. Uh, as a team, not just me. But, yeah, we look at for inspiration. Again, it's another game that sort of takes place in a sort of confined, small, relatively space, in the house, but actually super rich. Like it's almost like condensed kind of richness in
Right.
terms of like the story richness, the mechanics richness. So yeah, so some parallels there as well.
Amazing. All great games. Now, someone snuck this one in here, but this will make some sense to you. Uh, uh, what did you enjoy most of the Korean barbecue? Now, we need to tell the audience. We recently went to PAX, and I believe, I believe Kostas, you got involved in Korean barbecue night. I think I went to bed. I can't remember what I did
Yes.
that night.
Yes, it was. I don't remember much of it, if I'm perfectly honest.
I hear that
It was,
you ate a lot though. Enough food was
we
there.
did. We did. Yeah. Uh, uh, Leo, uh, Ward's head honcho, who I'm sure everyone's familiar was super generous that night,
Made sure everyone got fed.
made sure everyone would go really well fed. So yeah,
You're
I
still
can't
eating it
remember.
now. You brought it out.
Well, I'll say this about it. Basically, I since we came back, I've been on a no. I'm not a vegetarian, but I've been on a vegetarian regime because I've just felt like I needed to kind of cleanse and
Oh, that's
detox.
amazing. Oh, I
So
like
that's
that.
I've been doing that for like well, when do we get back? So I think it's close to a month now.
Yes.
So I'm really enjoying it, by the way. So let's see. It might
Until the
become
next
more of
one.
my
Until the next Korean barbecue night.
yeah, where everything will go out the window again. Or just overeat on meat. Yeah, it was great. It was very enjoyable
Amazing.
to hang
I'm
out with a
gutted.
bunch of
I missed out. If I'm honest. I probably should have come because, like you said, there was plenty of leftovers. One good question about creating the game and the story was: in which order did you do it? So the question is: did you create the game around the story, or did you create the concept of the game and then worked on the story? What
Mm.
way do you
I love
consider it?
I love that question when it comes up because it always puts me on the spot because I do not remember is the honest answer.
Right, there you go then.
But it's a good reason in that
It worked out in the
that I do
end.
remember. Well, yeah, I guess we'll find out. We'll see what people think. But I think the serious answer to that question is it was a bit of both. And I think usually, certainly again in an interactive medium like games, I think usually that is the best way to do it. I think if you get too fixated on, uh, well, assuming you are trying to tell a story with your game, right? If you get too fixated on just the sheer mechanics and the gameplay, your storytelling might suffer. If you get too fixated on just telling a story, it's very likely that your kind of moment to moment sort of gameplay experience might suffer. For us, I, I think gameplay sort of game came first. Like, we talked about kind of lemmings, and we talked about actually, back in those days, even, we're talking about thinking about how can we make sort of a good VR game. And So that was kind of the instigator for the exploration of what it was exactly that we were going to make. But um usually in games you sort of you don't know exactly what it is you're making until the thing is in a box and, and people are buying it, and that's fine, I think, because it means that you've as you discover what you're making, and this is actually Next Fest is very much part of that. You then go out, you show what you've done so far to people. People give you feedback.
You
Hopefully
make a
you
better
take
game.
yeah, you incorporate that feedback into the experience. Some of that feedback will be in the story or the way you're telling it. Some of that feedback will be on the gameplay, and for us, it was a symbiotic kind of constantly kind of symbiotic sort of relationship where, as the gameplay kind of developed at the start, we started kind of going, okay, but why, why are these soldiers here, who built them, and then answering those questions. And again, I think you also kind of find yourself inevitably as a creator kind of putting a lot of yourself in
Without
those
a doubt.
gaps, and again, I think that tends to kind of lead to better stories and just kind of more relatable stories as well, hopefully. So yeah, it was a sort of organic kind of symbiotic relationship, like say, between
Which
mechanics
leads
and
me on really well to this next question I've got is, what was the inspiration, do you believe, behind the game?
so from a gameplay point of view, like I say, we always look for we try to innovate. I think, there's always there will always kind of be, if you're looking to scratch a particular itch from a pure kind of gameplay point of view, there's always, there's game development tools have been democratized. There's always a game that's going to give you that particular, I don't know, racing game experience, or you know shooter experience, or whatever. And that's great. I love my racing games, so I tend to play lots of kind of different genres. But for us, we try to go, okay, what's out there that hasn't really quite you know been done before. And in my view, pretty much everything's been done before, but there's kind of interesting sort of intersections. For example, what do you get if you cross Lemmings with Charles Dickens, right? So
Yeah.
that's something that wasn't quite done before, I guess. Lemmings, has been done before. Charles Dickens has been done before, but the intersection of the two, hopefully, is something completely new that Tin Hearts sort of offers. We don't always necessarily try to innovate right from the get go. It's always good to, like, as I like to say, try
It's
to
a
stand on
natural
the
process.
shoulders of giants, because Lemmings has, for example, solved or answered a question of uh, that particular kind of puzzle gameplay very well. And then, the Victorian era again is ripe for super interesting stories that can be told. And in our case, again, I don't necessarily think it's a story that is of its era per se. What I'm excited about is that actually it utilizes that world to tell rather contemporary and, like say, personal story. So you kind of, you start with something that you feel is a strong starting point, and then the inspiration actually happens later on. Quite often, it doesn't really happen. A lot we tend to think is inspiration of that spark that happens right at the beginning. I think usually, really, what happens is you come up with a decent, strong enough kind of initial concept, but then the thing that differentiates it happens multiple times, later on, where you go, oh, actually, we could tweak it this way and that way, and then gradually you find your own identity that can be, many degrees apart from sort of where you started. And I think that's certainly true of Tin Hearts.
And it naturally just creates something really special, which sort of leads me to my final question for you, which is it's unfortunately one of those which it's that pick your children type question. What's your favourite thing about Tin Hearts?
Um,
Now you could do you could do one of those answers which is seeing you play it, because you can go download the demo right now.
well, uh, well, no, I mean, I guess my answer is kind of that, but in a very cheeky way. In that I'm gonna try and get as many people as possible watching this to get to the ending of the game.
Right, there you go. And then talking
It's,
about it. Yes.
because that is actually I don't know if it's because I was working on it recently as well, so it's fresh in my memory. But also, I guess no, the ending has been there from the start, like going back like 5 years now, or whatever, when we started sort of finalizing the sort of structure of the production plan for the game. But yeah, but kind of seeing it sort of come together now with all the elements, and it's something that I know. Many of us gamers sometimes, many games, and I think it's just kind of a nature of how production works in games. Sometimes you front load the effort, and the earlier parts of the game can feel more fleshed out and polished than the later parts, and certainly the ending. But for us, as soon as we sort of zeroed in on the particular story we wanted to tell, we had this full very specific sort of idea for how
You knew how it was
how the
going to go.
story plays
Yeah.
out, and the ending was very much a part of it, including to down to like specific sort of lines of dialogue, and kind of exactly how that plays out. So I think it's a very rewarding experience, hopefully throughout the experience, but certainly getting to sort of those final moments, and kind of seeing where this journey takes you. It's I certainly can't wait to see what people who get that far make of it. So yeah, I would say that is my favorite part.
Amazing. All perfect answers. Well done. It was all per the script. Well done. Thank you so much. So we've we've spoken enough about the game. People want to see it. So let's boot it up. Let's get the demo downloaded and open it up. And what we're going to do is we're going to look through a few elements of the demo. Obviously, we want you to go away and play it, but we also want to sort of give you the development commentary, basically the DVD extra. This is what you've come for. So what we're going to do is we're going to take a look immediately at the start of the demo right now, which we'll be quiet for briefly. So, Kostas, the intro to the game there. Are you happy to talk about what you're sort of alluding to, or is this the perfect start? Is this the sort of what's happening here? Okay, that was quite a dreamlike sequence. I don't know what the term is for what did you play as a child? The
Mobile.
mobile. There we go.
Mobile.
Yes. I'm sure it's in America. I'm sure it's probably called something else, but yeah, that's what I know it as. So what are you trying to get across in that sequence? Or feel free to say nothing if you want it to feel like it's a very sort of strange, majestic intro.
I will say something because you've asked me a question, and I don't like to
Not answer.
not answer to your question, Sam. I like to keep you happy. You're our producer after all. So
Contractually, you have to keep me happy. That's how it works.
exactly. So I will answer the question. I will try to answer it in a way, though, again, where it doesn't give stuff away, because it is the journey. Some journeys are linear and some journeys are cyclical, I guess. So that's what I'm going to say about that. But
I think that's a great answer. I think that's a great answer, and it's cinematic enough, and it's what any movie director would say, right? That would be it. That's the one.
Yeah. I mean, what we try to do with a game in general is sort of we're thinking about, and this is something that games are unique about, is it's an interactive medium. So you're telling a story by embodying the character as opposed to watching the character carry out some action. So we're always thinking, how can we elicit the feelings that this character would be feeling if they were a character in a book or a movie. How can we elicit these feelings in the player directly, as opposed to by association, which is what you'd have if you were reading a book or watching a movie. So it's always, and this is something that I feel us game designers are in a unique position to explore and affect in players. So yeah, so those are the two things I'm going to say about the intro. Is kind of like, and I guess what I'm describing here is the feeling of mystery, right? So it's a very mysterious intro. It poses more questions than it gives you answers,
And that's what we want.
and that it sadly is that was sort of the thinking behind this intro.
And then we introduced the player to their first soldier. Their first soldier is always the most important soldier. But what I love about this sequence is you know what to do straight from the off. In this one moment, right? That seems to be the good thing that you have to do. And then you introduced to the block mechanics. So could you talk about that? How that begins?
Yeah, so again, that's another kind of interesting challenge that we have to sort of face as game designers who are trying to tell a story, is but also make sure that the players are equipped with the tools to progress with that story with ideally as little or no frustration as possible. So, but also again, kind of do it in a way where we're not sort of lecturing or kind of teaching in a sort of passive way. So yeah, a lot of this kind of early part of the game, and you'll see it in a few more of the upcoming levels. Is us kind of you know creating the mystery around what's happening, at the same time kind of showing you the sort of beginner kind of mechanics, I
Yes.
guess, but always doing it in a way where you're kind of engaged and we're not teaching you the mechanics, you're discovering them by
Exactly.
actually playing the game and
Yes.
solving puzzles. And there might be simple puzzles, but you still have to solve them yourself, and as you solve them, you kind of experientially figure out. You go, oh right, okay, so these blocks, okay, I can rotate them, and they have little shapes on them, and they only fit in specific bases, and the soldiers when they bounce into them, they deflect in 90-degree angles. And yeah, like what I just said, we could have had like a block of text kind of explaining that, but
But let's give you a little breadcrumb, the breadcrumb trail,
exactly.
and find and also there's a lot of very you're doing very clever things here because actually you are introducing the story very early without knowing because there is an alternative route to maybe bounce off a family portrait and for the
Mm.
player to consider oh that okay there's you're playing a possibly a member of a family so there you all these things. It's very clever. Whoever designed this, genius, and that genius also likes your comments. So if you've got comments, if you're playing and you want to give feedback, that's always so important in these sort of moments because just in case. There are a few things that need tweaking by said genius. That genius needs to see those comments.
Absolutely. Yes, please.
Yes. But we're not just a stationary setup here because obviously we introduced the player to being above and moving some things down, but then you introduce the player to actually movement itself.
Yes, yeah, it's quite funny actually to see sort of by the time we get to this level, people are quite excited about
I
the
can
concept of
walk
I
around.
can
Yeah, yeah, yes.
yes, and we're not trying to be sort of facetious. Movement has been a mechanic in games since the beginning of time. It's not it's not a special power per se, but Tin Hearts is unique in some ways in that as a first person game, which I guess is what you would class it as. Once you get to this point, you can move around. Uh, similarly to kind of I guess walking sort of simulator games. But it is quite unique in that we do have sort of two main modes of interaction. One is them walking about and exploring the spaces. The other is the ability to manipulate these special objects in the environment, which is what you use to solve the puzzles. And it can get quite complex. I mean, for I guess for the more experienced gamers among us, it's probably not that big a deal. But we do want as many people as possible to experience the game, and uh, we have seen at playtests people who you wouldn't class necessarily as experienced gamers, progress through this kind of early chunk of the game and get to the point where they can move around. And now they've got these freestanding blocks, for example, and they've got these other mechanics. Oh, and I can move like these cannons around as well, and now there's trains I can move around. And all it is a pretty complex game in terms of what it lets you do with its interactions.
And you have to
And
remember all these things, don't you? Because once you've got a train on a train track, your sort of mind goes from 90-degree angles to I've got a yes, I can work this out. I just need to I just need to the brain
yeah,
needs to compute this.
and where do I move my character in the environment
Exactly.
so I have the correct angle so that I can sort of eyeball what's going on here. And so we have introduced obviously all sorts of like kind of helper mechanics. You've seen how you can sort of rewind time to correct mistakes easily. When you pause time, you can sort of pre-visualize the path of the soldiers. And all of these things, there's like kind of lots of like I guess sort of accessibility kind of mechanics, but it's still a game that requires a lot of kind of different interaction modes and different controls. And we like I say, we want to take everyone along on that journey, not just people who are already experienced with I guess kind of complex control methods. So yeah, so there is kind of a gradual sort of introduction to these different control schemes and interaction modes. I guess we could throw you straight in with the movement. For some people would be unfazed by that. I'm sure. We know for a fact that other gamers do find it overwhelming, but not if we do it in a sort of more gradual kind of way. So yeah, so that's why we've chosen to approach it this way. And we have seen players kind of get to the later acts in the game where it does get pretty mental. I think it's the only way to describe it. And because we've taken them along on this journey in this way, even the less experienced players who would normally struggle with a control scheme that utilizes the entire controller, or loads of keys on your keyboard, they're fine. They're fine
Yeah.
because they have learned how to play the game by now, and now it's all about solving the puzzles, and they're not blocked by the complexity of the controls, which is great to see.
The other thing that's worth talking about is that actually once you get that sort of you realise the room size you're in and the movement about, there's so many different interesting things happening because obviously you're going to start getting a bit of the story delivered to you, but you're also going to start looking at the environment. You hide blocks in the environment, things that are very important to you. But then I'm a bit of a planner when it comes to puzzle games. I like to. I'm going to go over here and I'm going to end up here, and then you can totally do that. So some of the later levels, you're going to be traversing across multiple heights, platforms, tables, and we use drums and we use all these cute devices. The balloon machine, which is possibly the cutest animation there. Well, they're all cute, but one of my favorites. And I love this being able to map out how you're going to complete these puzzles, and lots of people, which I think must intrigue you guys, but the people's like logic is very different. Some people will do certain ways of completing the puzzles, others another way. Are you anticipating that, or
So that's such a good question. I'm going to have to try and unpack it because it's actually multiple great questions in one question there. So let me see if I remember everything. So one thing you said, people approach things, and people have different kind of logic, as you said, and you know no logic is necessarily. I mean, yeah, there are some some approaches that just won't work. Um, but we've definitely adjusted puzzles based on observations from playthroughs where someone might try something that we haven't really sort of foreseen, but it's actually maybe with a little bit of adjustment here or there, it's actually a super valid way to approach the solution. So when we see that, we in general we want to have the game play we want to have the game support your play style, sort of thing. So we don't want to force you down a specific kind of path that we feel is the right way.
correct?
there is
Yeah,
there is obviously by the sheer nature of us kind of designing the various puzzles, there will usually be one or more kind of main ways. But then, like I say, we see people try other things and we're like, oh, that's great. We should make that kind of an official thing, and just kind of if it's already possible, great. But if we could do something, if we could nudge like this chair a little bit, or put another drum here or whatever, just to make that easy and like completely valid, as opposed to like maybe a weird exploit, then we will do that. So that's one thing. We want to build the game such that if you spot something and you feel it makes sense and you want to try it, you
then
try
it
it and
should
it
make
does work.
sense. Yeah,
Exactly. So that's one thing. The other thing is, you mentioned about kind of the different scale of things, and because we discussed about the different interaction modes and how you go from sort of player avatar mode, so the first person mode, down to kind of placing blocks and tweaking things in the environment, which is kind of the you know the tin soldier sort of scale. And that's a technical challenge for us. Um, because in something like It Takes Two, which is a game that I absolutely adore, you tend to be in just that sort of tiny sort of toy kind of scale the entire time. With us, it's like you're in the tiny scale, you move some stuff around, and now you need to move over there, so you go back to first person mode, you move over there, you do some other stuff here, then uh, advance time or rewind. You play with time control. So there's a sort of tiny scale, the normal scale. There's time that is completely volatile and under your control. And yes, and also we have to support that. We have to make sure that it's completely seamless. And also, as you said, we have to support the two main different play styles, because you said you like to plan, and that's certainly something that we see a lot when we watch playthroughs and when we play test the game, where people will you load
Look
a
at
new
their
level,
environment. But yeah,
and you just get look around and you're like, okay, boom, 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 that goes there, that goes there, that goes there. Open the box, fast forward, done. And other people like, I don't know what's going to happen. Let me open
yeah,
the
it's fine.
box.
Yeah, yeah,
Doors
yeah.
come out.
At
Oh,
what
they just
point? At
die
what
over
point is it going
here.
to go wrong? Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
No, work
right. Okay, let
backwards.
me tweak that. Okay, rewind, tweak that. Okay. Oh, now I need to do this other thing over here. Great. We love to see it. Both ways of playing are absolutely valid. The more sort of reactive planners versus the more sort of like to plan ahead sort of planners. Um, and sometimes we make it so that you have to step outside of your comfort zone. We love to do that. It's just kind of just when people have think they figured out like a play style that this is like my silver bullet. I can solve everything this way. We go, no, no, no. We're gonna for your enjoyment, to be fair, we're gonna sort of take you outside of your comfort zone, and then you try something else, and then you pull it off, and it's like, okay, that was cool as well. Actually, I could do this too. But yeah, it comes down to, like I say, we build the game so that you can have the best time possible. In the way that works for you.
And certain elements as well where you have to consider um, clearing the path or a route for future in the puzzle, which we can see here with using cannons to knock down books, which I'm sure will catch a few people out because they'll get to a stage and go, oh, I forgot to at that point hit that. But the wonderful thing is you can then unfortunately rewind all your hard work and then do it again and go again. But even that adds so many more layers to what you thought at the start was quite a basic A to B puzzle. When you start adding C and D in, it's you realise the complexity that you have for yourself upcoming.
Exactly. The fact that you can control time does give us, well, essentially a whole other dimension, fourth dimension to play with in terms of designing the puzzles. We do try to make sure that you know the game is not punishing, and I don't personally uh enjoy sort of having to kind of tread kind of old ground in terms of, okay, I can I get it, I made a mistake here, but please don't make me like replay this whole section. So
Yes.
there are ways that we've introduced to avoid that, both in the puzzle design and like mechanics like the rewind mechanic, and you can always you don't need to reset your level. You can always shut the box to recall your soldiers, and sometimes that is kind of a faster way. Once you've figured out, exactly how to set things up, sometimes that is a faster way to just recover from an untenable solution. And again, talking about symbolism, sometimes you just have to, go back to square one, and that's actually going to be less painful than you think it is. So yeah, so you're absolutely right. There's a balance to be struck when it comes to not going not being too punishing, I guess, with a puzzle design, and we've certainly tried to do that.
Well, Costas, I think we've certainly opened the box on a lot of the things in the demos, but unfortunately, we now have to close the. Oh, see. Oh no, no, no!
Very
We have
good,
to. We
very
don't
good.
close. Don't close the box because that would start it over. Now we're getting through
Oh,
the
open it.
door. Yeah.
Yeah,
now, now the door's opened,
yeah.
and for those watching, you can go, like we said, we can go download the demo right now and experience it for yourself. Hopefully, our little chat today has offered you an insight into the game, its past, its future, and some, like I say, I like to describe it as the DVD extras. This is the content everyone wanted to come for. But I suppose what we have to end on, Costas, is when can people expect to see more? When can they get access to? I know this, but this is the part of presenting this. I've got to allude to you. What? Yeah, when can people find out more, Costas? I don't know.
Later this year. Later this year. Yeah, is what we're aiming for at the moment.
Wonderful. Thanks so much, Costas. Thanks for your time. And like we said, anyone who's gone out their way to download the demo, your feedback is muchly appreciated, and that will help make a better game.
Absolutely, yes. Please get in touch in the games Steam forum, in the lovely Wired Discord, which is a great community that you should totally join. In the Rogue Sun Discord, let us know what you think. We absolutely love to hear, and like Sam said, we do go through each and every comment. And if you do like the game and the demo, please wishlist. It always helps us.
Make sure, the wish lists are very important. I'm so glad I've got you here, Costas. Otherwise, this would have gone terribly wrong.
Well, we got each other, Sam. So hope you enjoy it, and thanks for organizing this stream, Sam. It's been a pleasure.
It's been the hours I put into doing this to get into this slot. My word, the work I've had to do. But it's been a pleasure, Kostas, and I can't wait to see more. Should we wave? Is that a thing? Do they do that on the internet? Bye!
Let's do it. Why not?
Let's do it. Thanks for tuning in, everyone.
Yes.